otherwise stated when I call your name. Commissioner Scott?
Yeah, mute.
Oh, I sure am. Okay, present.
Commissioner Baker McCormick?
Here.
Commissioner Marecki?
Here.
Commissioner Kinlock?
Present.
Commissioner Anderson?
Present.
Vice Chair Baydoun?
Here.
Chair Varga?
Here.
You have a quorum present.
Thank you.
Next item B, Chairwoman's remarks.
I'm just very sad to hear about Commissioner Haddis' sister passing, and our condolences to him and his family. We'll keep him in and his family in our thoughts and our prayers. Next item, please.
Item C, approval of the minutes of the March 9th, 2021 meeting.
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and supported. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
We're moving to item D, unfinished business. Requesting commission approval of budget adjustment 2021-35031, certifying revenue in the county park fund.
Okay, could you please move it up on the agenda? And this item is still not ready for us, so we're gonna
I'll pass for the day.
pass it for the day.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Please take the roll.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Baker McCormick?
Yes.
Commissioner Marecki?
Yes.
Commissioner Kinlock?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson? Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Baydoun?
Yes.
Chair Varga?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Commissioner Anderson, we marked you present because we just knew
Thank
you
you.
were gonna be here. Next item, please.
Under new business, item 1, an update from Chief Financial Officer Huey Newsom on the county's coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security act spending.
Thank you. Mr. Newsom.
Good afternoon, commissioners and all who can hear my voice. Wanted to share with you all just an update on the spending for that we had on the CARES Act money that we received last calendar year from the federal government to help us deal with the coronavirus, the pandemic. We can go, and whoever's presenting, thank you very much for presenting. I always like to have someone on the other side presenting, or at least showing the slides, just in case I have technical difficulties. So I do want to state for the record, I really appreciate that. We'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, so just to level set, so everybody understands what happened. I think everybody remembers the $188 million that we received directly from the federal government last May. That was dedicated for the county's coronavirus relief effort. And so there were certain stipulations that were put to us to spend that money. In addition to that, the state of Michigan also received an allotment of money, and they provided us with $19 million in addition to get us to $207 million. State of Michigan basically communicated to us that instead of us receiving our last revenue sharing payment, every year we get revenue sharing through sales tax revenue, because of the expected shortfall in that fund in fiscal 20, the state of Michigan instead elected to provide local governments with their pass-through other coronavirus relief money from them in what was called the Coronavirus Relief Local Government Grant. And instead of us getting that $12 million at the end, we instead got $19 million of restricted money. So our total allotment of restricted money was $207 million. The reason that this is important is twofold. I think we did discuss last year during the budget process that we did lose that $12 million of unrestricted GFGP money because it was not distributed by the state of Michigan, but we did increase our coronavirus relief money through that pass-through mechanism. One thing that's important to note, the timeline from the state of Michigan for us to spend that $19 million did expire in December of 2020, even though the U.S. government did give an extra year to spend the original 188 million. Up to this point, the state of Michigan has not communicated to us that the 19 million is has an extension. And of course, we have in our reporting, we reflected that the 19 million has been exhausted in order to comply with the timeline provided by the state of Michigan. Next slide, please. So we grounded ourselves in understanding that there was $207 million worth of spend. This slide here will show you the breakdown of spend by department. Now, in the next 3 slides, you're going to see 3 things. You're going to see the spend by department. You're going to see the spend by, I'll say, activity. And the final slide you're going to see is going to be the spend by project. Now, different, as you can imagine, different projects are going to line up with different departments. And so you'll recall last year, we had the small business grant program, right? So you see $62.5 million in economic development. That, a lot of that money, that $62.5 million, is a $50 million in change that came through the small business grant program. Additionally, you see the sheriff's office has $82.2 million of spend. And we'll get to in a second, a lot of that is going to be us using CARES relief money to fund payroll to free up general fund, general purpose dollars as a quote unquote project. So even though you'll have these slides to see, but it's difficult to kind of understand them unless you take all 3 in parallel. But this one really shows the spend by department. If we go to the next slide, you can now see the different initiatives. And again, the lion's share of what you see in the blue, the 76.8, most of that again is the sheriff's office, is money that we were able to spend on payroll expenses to free up GFGP dollars. Have to remind everyone that there was talk of us being able to use this money for revenue losses. But in the final version of the bill, local governments were not allowed to use this money for revenue losses. However, we were allowed to use this money for a couple of different buckets I want to point out. One, for payroll for dedicated employees, more specifically frontline employees or public health and safety employees. So those dollars would normally have been spent, that payroll would have normally been funded by general fund, general purpose dollars or other grants, just general fund, general purpose. But in this specific scenario, we were able to use, with explicit guidance allowed from Treasury, we were able to instead utilize CARES money to fund the payroll for those particular offices or departments, because those departments were considered frontline. Additionally, again, like I said, like I showed below, you see the $55.5 million for small business assistance, that yellow. That's another large part of the spend by, spend category, right? Some other ones I do want to point out, the substantially dedicated or diverted payroll as well. Just like we were given explicit guidance that we could use money for payroll for frontline employees, we were also allowed to use money for activities in administrative and other departments that are non-frontline for those payroll costs, as long as we can verify and document that the activities that were carried out by employees in those particular departments were substantially different due to COVID. Give you an example. My paycheck, if I were to spend 10% of my time, just making this up, if I were to spend 10% of my time going through my department, cleaning desks and cleaning areas, to make sure that they were that we had cleansed them to the point to stop the spread of the virus. In theory, that 10% of my time could be dedicated and charged to the grant and not be charged to general fund, general purpose money. So I think some of you are aware, I know the commission staff is aware that Guidehouse, who I do need to make a plug for Guidehouse, who's been very instrumental in helping us manage this influx of money. They have been very diligent in helping us document so we don't run into compliance issues later, and also report out on not just how many dollars are going and hitting this grant, but also making sure we have all the documentation, all the tracking, all the necessary data so that we can survive, audits going forward in the future. Other thing I wanted to point out is as you go to the side, you see other programs as well. You see economic support of $6 million outside of small business assistance. I think you all were aware of the debit card program we did, or the Wayne County Cares program, in which we took restaurant employees and mostly restaurant employees, not just restaurant employees, maybe some fitness center employees as well, who lost their income due to COVID. We were able to provide them, debit cards so that they could have some spending money as part of a relief program to help with dealing with the impact of COVID. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. So this, and again, this is the third slide that I was telling you about. So you saw the spend by department, you saw the spend by program, and so this is the particular these are the individual projects that were tied to a department and tied to a category, if you will, in the previous two slides. I think this should make things crystal clear when you look at all three slides and collectively. So again, the lion's share of what we spent the money on was for substantially dedicated employees. Again, frontline employees whose payroll could be charged to the grant to the tune of 73.9 million. This would impact that's the reason you see such a large number that hit the sheriff's department and a large number that also hit HHVS for some of those administrative dollars. Again, the small business grants program, 51.5 million to give small business grant relief to businesses as they prepared to address COVID, dealt with the revenue loss of COVID, et cetera. And again, I pointed out a few minutes ago that substantially different and dedicated payroll for non-frontline departments that had COVID response activities to the tune of 14.4 million. Another thing I do want to point out, in our initial response to the crisis back in the spring of 2020, the county executive, along with the elected officials, worked on the paid employee furlough. And we went on that paid county employee furlough for, I believe, 6 weeks. And so we were able to charge a majority of that payroll so that employees could stay home and prepare their families and deal with the fact that schools were out, all the things we had to go through in the initial onset of the pandemic. That $12.3 million is that.
I just want to say that is really good news.
Yes, it's excellent news. It just goes in, I have to give
really good that we could.
Yes, and I do want to point out, and give the county executive, kind of a shout out here, because at the time we didn't know, but as he has told us many times in administration, it's very important for us to put health and public health before we put before the finances, but we have to remain solvent. We can't let this pandemic address risk our solvency. The good news is, after the fact, we were rewarded by the federal government with the ability to charge most of those dollars over to the CARES grant. And again, I'll go through some of the bigger ones here, but this slide is very important, so you can see all the initiatives almost down to the full 207. We get down to 202.9 million. There's some very small ones that add up to about 14 additional lines that add up to 1.1 million. And if need be, we can get that information to you as well. But these 20 initiatives here line up a vast majority of all the projects that we use the money on. One thing I do want to point out that's important, I don't want to get too deep into the accounting minutia, but as you will recall, last calendar year before we hit during the holidays, we had kind of a fever rush to get all the money spent, before December 30th, which was the original deadline. And then obviously at the last minute, the federal government extended the deadline for the usage of the money. And so we had a number of projects that were identified that would have gotten us to, as you see the numbers here, 202.9 plus the 1.1, which would get you to 204, excuse me, which isn't quite 207, so that leaves 3 million left over. Well, once the extensions, we had spent 204 of the 207 at that point. We had 3 million left over. And once that happened, the recommendation that was presented to administration was, well, listen, you've got all this money that you are planning to spend, that you've earmarked for these projects, earmarked for testing or PPE spend or what have you, that would have happened in fiscal 21, the last 3 months of the calendar year. So that October, November, December timeframe, we were pushing hard. We had money left over, and one of the things that was recommended was, let's instead use GFGP money to fund those projects, and then instead use CARES money to fund payroll going into the new fiscal year now that we have this relief. So there's almost like a indirect spend, if you will. So some of these projects that would have happened in fiscal 21, we're actually using GFGP money that's freed up that we don't have to spend in the second, third, and hopefully on into the fourth quarter on payroll. So, please ask me questions if you don't understand that concept. The reason that we did that was the way these projects were identified. Some of them are slam dunks, right? So explicit guidance in Treasury that says you can use this money for payroll expenses for frontline employees. 73.8 million that you see is number one. Some of these projects are going to be things that we have to work out and figure out. Like for instance, it might be some telework projects where it's clear but not explicitly stated. So to make sure that we're audit proof and the audit doesn't, future audits are not as challenging as they sometimes are. That's the reason we use that the usage of GFGP money in the first quarter for some of these projects, and instead are going to use the CARES money on payroll going forward. And please ask me questions if you don't understand that. So we can go to the next slide, please. So this goes to what I was just saying before. As of the end of fiscal year 2020, so that would have been all the spend as of 9/30/2020, we had worked through $123 million of spend, and then $84.4 million is what's left over for 10/1/2020 and beyond, which that expires. That we definitely should have spent all the money by this coming December. But that's the breakdown of 20 versus 21. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. No questions on that.
Let's stop right there, because I'm not sure if anybody had any questions or didn't want to stop you. Any committee members have any questions till this point?
I do.
Okay, Maraki.
And thank you, Huey. This is really a great slideshow. Thank you. I just have one question. Your first slide that you put up about the spending by department, the county executive spent almost $3 million, that department. What initiatives would have been under the county executive section that was $3 million?
Off the bat, some of the dedicated payroll that would have hit, some of the dedicated payroll that I talked about before, that would have been spread out amongst multiple departments including the county executive department. That's the one thing. So also, I believe the furlough pay also would have hit his department too. So you're going to see that interspersed throughout all the different departments, because the furlough pay and the substantially dedicated with the activity shift would have also hit as well. Other things that could have hit as well, any communication initiatives around health, like for instance, testing projects would have hit the communications department, which sits under the CEO.
Okay, thank you.
No
No,
problem.
that's my only question. This is really great.
Anyone else? Okay, go ahead.
So if we can go back, what I wanted to do in the last series of slides, there we go. So the last series of slides, what I wanted to do here is talk a little bit about the geographic distribution of some of the projects. So some of the projects that would have hit, the general population of Wayne County. So first, again, we talked about the over $50 million of, this will be made, if this hasn't been made available, it will be made available to you, so you can, dissect it as you wish. But, this is the small business grant that we did that we executed back in the summer, late spring, summer timeframe, where small businesses were given up to $20,000, could apply for up to $20,000 worth of relief through the Economic Development Department. So that's this map here. If we go to the next slide. So that's the distribution by census tract. We go to the next slide. We can see, if you go up, I think you skipped the slide 8. It's the same information now by city or township, by municipality. So you see the breakdown by census tract, and now in the table, you can see the breakdown by city or township. So go to the next slide, please. So one more. There we go. So the same thing with the nonprofit grant. So we also provide and support to nonprofits that had activities dedicated to helping citizens deal with as well. And again, you can see the awards by city on this slide here. There's also a graphic of how that money is distributed geographically to the right. Go to the next slide, please. Now, with the Wayne County CARES Grant program, this particular program, again, was giving debit cards right at the end of the year for any restaurant worker, or I believe we also expanded it to fitness center employees. Any employees in certain industries, service workers that were not, could not continue their employment, obviously, because the restaurant was shut down, what have you. And so you can see the distribution here by zip code, and we have individual addresses, so you can see in a geographic fashion how the money was distributed. And of course, you expect to see certain clusters around where you have a heavy, a heavy concentration of restaurants.
Do you know offhand how restaurants and other people were notified besides social media and maybe
we worked directly with a number of restaurants to identify their workers as well. So social media, I believe also some, Bill Nolan's communications group also helped to get the word out, so to speak. And also we also had worked directly with restaurants to see if we can notify some of their laid off workers.
Okay, because I just didn't know if I didn't see many of my community on there, so I wanted to. I didn't know if there was such a list or anything like that, but if we don't, it would probably be good to have.
I can get you a list, a more detailed list of how the notifications went out if need be.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
No
Go ahead.
problem. So we keep going?
Yes, continue.
Thank you. So the next slide should be, yes, the same program, but except now we're looking at individual cities and townships and who was in the number of awardees by city and township.
I see them now. Okay, thank you. I was concerned. I thought.
Oh, okay, I see. So yeah, this
I
is
didn't see my
the
city.
information. I see what you mean. If this is the information you needed, yeah, by city and by township, you got it.
Okay, thanks.
No problem at all. I'll take that off my to-do list.
Yeah, do that.
We go to the next slide, please. So a couple of things I did want to note, even though the last two slides in the presentation really deal with what's next, right? So you all know that the pandemic is still with us. You know, we're having this meeting by Zoom, obviously. I wanted to talk a little bit, just give you all an update, if you will, on a couple of new programs and new grants that are pretty sizable that will take quite a bit of our attention and administration over the next few weeks and months. So the first one, the county, through the work of HHPS and the Public Health Department, has been working on its vaccine program to vaccinate residents of Wayne County. And part of how we're going to fund that, there's several grants here that are listed that you can see. Three relatively small ones from MDHHS to fund our vaccine program, but we have a huge allowance, if you will, that FEMA has worked with us to provide us with up to $72 million of funding to fund our vaccine program. Now, for those who are familiar with FEMA funding, it is pretty stringent, and we're working through how do we build a program that is allowable to FEMA funds, but at the same time meets our needs. The next time that we meet, one thing that we should have prepared for you is a budget adjustment to accept the first $36 million of that $72 million. And then there will be another adjustment at some point in time, or at least some portion of the dollars that we need to do this. Obviously, this is super important. We need to get vaccines in arms as quickly as possible. The federal government is watching us. You know, the president has made it very clear he wants 100 million shots in arms by May 1st. You know, obviously we play a role in that. So this is super important to the county, and everybody is, watching us. And plus, getting that amount of money from FEMA is a gift, but it's also a burden as well. So I wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that, because the next time, or very soon, we will be coming to you with a budget adjustment to certify this revenue, and obviously begin giving you updates on how things are going with the vaccine program.
Okay, we'll stop there, Commissioner Marecki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Huey, as far as this money, for example, Livonia, Wayne County gave the vaccinations to Livonia, and they used their own EMS services to vaccinate, several thousand people. Would they be eligible for any of this money? Because the firefighters were all paid overtime to do this type of program. Mm-hmm. Would they be eligible for any of this? There were no Wayne County workers that. I'm
going to be honest. I'm going to say I don't know. Okay. I'm looking at my cell phone. I don't see a text message, so I don't think that has been determined yet. If some of this money could be done via pass through, obviously that would have to be done in coordination with the HHVS department and public health, who will be the administrators of this money. So I don't want to tell you a lie. I can look into it and get back to you, but I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Have they asked for additional staff to be able to vaccinate everyone on a timely basis?
Part of what is currently being worked on right now is part of what's being worked on right now is going with a contractor to increase our staffing, right? So it won't be Wayne County employees trying to deploy all these vaccines. We're looking at we have an RFP that will solicit either a partner or partners to help get these vaccines out the door. And I did want to come back to the previous question and just say that there can be no duplication of effort. So if we were to use FEMA funding to do something like that, we have to be very careful to make sure that we're not overlapping service areas between a recipient of the FEMA dollars and us as Wayne County deploying the vaccine as well. And FEMA is a stickler for that sort of thing. So.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any committee members? Okay, you may continue.
So the last slide here, thank you, Madam Chair. The last slide here talks about the other monies that the county just received, if we can go to it. The American Rescue Plan, I wanted to give everybody an update on where this is and what next steps are. I think you all are watching the news. You saw that the county did receive roughly just south of $340 million as part of the American Rescue Plan. It's not just for COVID response. It's also to provide funding support for local and state governments. The county is currently putting together a framework. As you can see, this money is available through December 31st of 2024, or at least it can be spent through December 31st of 2024. We're currently now working on a framework, if you will, for how we're going to spend this money. It's a blessing and a curse, so to speak, or I shouldn't say a curse, but a challenge to think through how you deal with such an opportunity to make sure that you're addressing not just current needs, but future needs of the county. So there's more to come on this. I did want to just update those that were not aware of it, or at least had not gotten this level of detail. The key points of this slide are, obviously, we have $339 million through 12/31 in 2024. It helps us to deal with the COVID crisis from a public health standpoint, negative economic impacts, direct assistance to households that can include rental assistance as well. Also, to fund essential work, payroll for essential work that could for state employees, territorial employees, tribal employees. And then in addition to that, we also have some mechanism to address revenue loss, and that's number 3. So there'll be more to come on this. We will be presenting a framework and hopefully a plan at some point. But as of right now, no decisions have been made, as we're still working through just the compliance portion of what's allowable, what's not allowable, with the help of our consultants from Guidehouse, who have really been helpful in guiding us through the original CARES Act monies, plus other grants that we've been able to collect in our coronavirus relief efforts from the state and from the feds.
Are the local governments, I'm sorry, are the local governments getting their own funding directly, or will it be channeled through the state, the county, or?
Yes, and yes. As of right now, I can tell you that we're not the only municipality. I know City of Detroit got an allotment. I can't remember off the top of my head who else got an allotment in the state of Michigan. So there's a direct injection from the federal government, as well as we anticipate that the state will also pass through monies as well.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I know the city of Dearborn is receiving $48 million, and I believe the city of Dearborn Heights, if I'm not mistaken, about maybe 25 or 35 million. That's not part of this money that's coming to the county. Am I correct?
No, you are
separately.
absolutely correct. I'm sorry, Commissioner, to interrupt you, but you are absolutely correct. That would have come directly from the federal government.
I also heard that the city of Detroit is receiving close to $800 million from this stimulus package. Do we know, in comparison to other counties, what other Oakland and Macomb are receiving? Or we don't know that?
I don't know it off the top of my head. Yeah, we can get that information for you, but I do want to address the discrepancy in what Detroit got versus what Wayne County got. The formula isn't straight population based. It's population. There's also an economic, I'm gonna say, impoverishment index part of the formula as well. So because City of Detroit, per capita income lower, poverty levels higher, they got a larger allotment of the funding.
I'm happy the city of Detroit, they need it. I'm happy that they got this kind of money. I just would have liked to see the other communities outside Wayne County, the other 43 communities get even more. But no, I'm happy that Detroit got what they got in terms of the funding.
Okay, are you finished? Commissioner Baidoon, are you finished?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Kinlock.
Yes, my question is, as it relates to the $339 million discretionary funding, as it relates to utilizing those funds, how creative and what sort of latitude does the county have to create programs for some disadvantaged businesses, as well as individuals who may need some additional support during this time? Like, are there any? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, there are a couple of pieces to it. The language, as I understand it now, does provide some latitude in terms of being able to help small businesses. We definitely use the original allotment of money, the original CARES funding, to help small businesses rail in certain directed grants. Now, in terms of what the county is going to do and how much, that's still a TBD. I know everybody's kind of chomping at the bit to kind of understand how much money we're going to put where and when. We still are working through that framework, but I will say that, any plan, if you do it in steps or if we do it all at once, I think that you can rest assured that we will be bringing that in front of commission and in some level to make sure that we have the appropriate buy-in. But yeah, still, unfortunately, right now, it's still TBD because we're still learning and guidance is still being delivered to us from the federal government.
Will the creation or the development of the ideas on how these funds will be used, will the commission be brought in on the very front end? As you all understand, there's still some learning phase that you're going through and understanding the compliance and the latitude that you might have. Will the conversation on the utilization of these funds, will the commission be brought in on the front end, or you all will author the ideas and bring them to us for any additional consideration?
It's that even that is TBD, to be honest. We're just digesting it, but we can work through certain channels to figure out where the appropriate placement of certain decision making should lie.
Thank you.
No problem.
Madam Chair.
To finish the thought on Commissioner Kinlock and then Commissioner Anderson, I have asked for the chair and myself and others to get a briefing when we start working. So in essence, I think the commission will be working along the side of the executive to make sure that we're all on the same page, realizing that at first our role may be limited, but we will be very much involved through communications from the CFO. I'm I'm sure he'll be updating us as we go along. And we're going to be giving our 2 cents worth in, as we always do. So I see this as a very workable and working environment between the executive and the commission when it comes to these dollars. And I think the executive has worked very well with the commission in the dollars that we did get last year. So I'm looking forward to more of the same as we go along and work through these and make sure that the projects that we as the commission would like to see funded will be considered. And so I would like to just say yes instead of to be determined.
Fair enough. Fair enough, Madam Chair.
I absolutely like that better.
Okay. Well, you know, I was not going to let you go on that one.
I figured as such.
In the past 2 years, we have worked our budget in a consensus form, and I see nothing changing except maybe we learned how to do things better to work together. So Commissioner Kinlock, I think you will be very pleased. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just add my quick 2 cents worth. I totally agree that we need to be more involved in from the beginning rather than seeing something just brought to us for approval. So I hope the administration will do that, and I'll be looking for that, and glad to hear you're on board too, and we're hopefully that's going to happen. Thank you.
It's always nice to work together. It's a lot better environment, especially during these times. Commissioner McCormick, Baker.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I had my hand raised and then it said lower your hand. So
I did not see it. I'm sorry. Commissioner Scott and then Commissioner McCormick.
Thank you.
Seniority. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And when Mr. Newsom showed the list of cities regarding the businesses, I didn't see Highland Park on there. I saw my city of Hamtramck, but I didn't see Highland Park. So tell me that Highland Park did get some money, but you just don't have it on there. And if they didn't get any, they're going to get some this time.
Could you go back to the slide? I just want to see. The slide we're talking about.
See, it normally would have come right under Hamtramck.
No, Highland Park. So this is in the order of award amount. This is in order of award amount. So you see Highland Park, 33 awardees, $419,000. In the second, it's in the second set of numbers. It's not in alphabetical.
Okay,
order.
I see it now. Okay, normally it's in alphabetically. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Commissioner Baker.
No problem.
Not very much, but thank you.
I do want to say, if I may, the distribution on who applied and who was accepted. So, and we tried our best. Word out. I know Madam Chair Varga had expressed concern about this too. So as best we could, we tried to. But this is a function of who applied and who got through the process. And I know the Wayne Cares program was we had to push to get it fully subscribed. And so it's not like we ran out of money. It's not like we ran out of money and capped it. Instead, pretty much everybody that applied, was that met the criteria received the award.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Finally, Commissioner Baker McCormick, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So from the funds that we had prior to the American Rescue Plan, have we exhausted all of those funds?
Well, this is the way it works. The answer to the question is yes, because I showed how we're spending the 200 up to 204. and the balance of the money, the next 3 million, that last 3 million is, you know, the administration is planning on using that money for, you know, for frontline employee payroll. So that what I've talked about before, how we know that we can use that money for frontline employee payroll, particularly in health and in the sheriff's office. So in theory, the answer to your question is yes. Now,
so it's been oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's been earmarked. It's been earmarked. That's correct.
Okay, and I was trying to recall on what though. What do we know what that last amounts are for? Because I know we're looking at some HHS items that we need to take care of as far as a call center. So I'm just trying to figure out, are we using funds that we currently have, or are we looking at using funds down the line?
Yeah, and so let me answer it this way. With a potential call center, I think that one thing we want to consider for that is, would the call center be something? And again, I'm not aware. I didn't attend the last HHS committee, so forgive me. I don't have the full context of this, but one thing that I would be interested in is can we utilize FEMA money? Can we utilize FEMA money to do that, because that call center be related to vaccine deployment? So ideally, what you want to use is use a more restrictive, narrowly defined money for its specific use, as opposed to using less defined, less restricted money on such a purpose. I mean, because we have all this money that is dedicated to vaccine deployment, and because we have such a need to get vaccines out, the strategy in my mind should be that a call center dedicated to vaccine deployment should be funded with FEMA.
Right.
FEMA dollars. And of course, that's very narrowly defined funding, right? So.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
So would the National Guard be funded by FEMA then?
I don't want to get too far out of my lane here, but if the National Guard has been chosen or is chosen to provide security, then that will fall under FEMA funding.
Okay. There's been a question posed, and I have to just preface it by saying that I think all of our Wayne County employees are essential workers, but what's the definition according to how we can use the money for funding that we classify essential workers?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that question. And every single employee, I know personally, because we're so short staffed, every single employee in Wayne County is definitely essential. We say essential, we mean in crisis mode. If you're in a defined crisis mode or emergency mode, what are those absolute have to have business functions that are going to have to remain in effect for 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, or if you're talking about frontline employees, you're talking about, okay, fine, kind of rule of thumb is who has to work over the holiday, right? Who has to work over the holiday? So those are the rules of thumb, if you will, the definitions. But in terms of the way that the federal government's looking at it, we're looking at essential employees as those that are directly supporting the response to COVID. So we're talking about public safety, we're talking about public health. So when you see this slide here, it says essential work, that's really what we're looking at.
Okay, so that would probably include some of the nurses then too, right?
That is in theory, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that question was asked, and under public service or public comments, if that question was not answered or need more information, feel free to ask under public comments. This is to the person who asked the question. For committee members, are there any other questions for Mr. Newsom? Commissioner Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It may have been mentioned earlier, but Huey, can you make sure we get a copy of the presentation, hopefully today or tomorrow?
Yes, I can arrange that. I think staff has it. So either they can, either someone from staff can send it, or I can send it directly to you all.
Well, since staff has it, would you please make sure that all commissioners get this?
And thanks on behalf of me. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So who is going to send it? I just want to make sure that we put this in.
Commissioner, I'll send it out for everybody.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
Alrighty. Is there more to your presentation?
Oh no, all we have left is the appendix. We are, my presentation is concluded unless there are any other questions.
Okay. Any questions from commissioners? If I don't see your hand, please just speak up. Okay. Well, thank you very much. This has been very, very enlightening and very well put together to be understood very clearly. So I appreciate all the hard work.
No, thank you, and I have to say thanks to the consultants that help me put it together, and I appreciate the kind words.
Madam Chair, before we let the CFO go, he was going to talk about the Raymond contract.
Yes, Mr. Abel, do you have any other questions before on this before we move on?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Mr. Newsom.
Mm-hmm. So, if we're at that point in the agenda, I'm happy to start to.
Well, let's just go ahead and do it since you're here.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So, what is before you today, I believe, is two things: the budget adjustment that's shifting money within the budget division to pay for a contractor to come in and help us in the budget division, as well as the contract for a contractor. I think everyone's familiar with Raymond as a firm. They used to be the county. They used to be the county's auditor before the current contract with Plant Moran came up, as well as they provided assistance both in the treasurer's office with I believe an audit, and also backfilled when the deputy CFO became ill. I think a couple of years ago or last year, no, a couple of years ago. So we are currently in a situation, I think everybody knows, and I think he's even on this call. Kevin Haney retired, our long-time budget director, retired last year. In a pinch, we asked him to come back to help us. We were struggling to carry out the day-to-day functions of the budget division, and unfortunately, we lost our our budget director at that time is no longer with us now. We have been using Kevin as kind of a stopgap until we found a permanent solution, another permanent solution to help us and be the budget director of the county. Since then, we have swung and missed, if you will, on a couple of different candidates that have made it all the way to the to the CEO's office in terms of review. Really, I think we have to consider what it's going to take for us to get a long-term budget.
Mr. Newsom, before we go on with your presentation, can I clarify something?
Sure.
This is a matter of a contract with Raymond Robson to perform some services for Wayne County, and the reason that Mr. Newsom is speaking about it now is because it's considered urgent. And we had a choice of, and we received it very late. So the choice was either approve it through exigent circumstances or exigent approval, I should say, or put it in GovOps for tomorrow's meeting. So Chair Bell asked, okayed it going to GovOps, even though it's something that should be going to Ways and Means, as long as the CFO discussed the matter at Ways and Means. And Ways and Means committee members were invited to the GovOps meeting tomorrow to see the full presentation regarding this matter. So
Yeah,
that, so we don't have anything before us now, but it will be presented tomorrow. But we wanted to make sure that Ways and Means Committee members were apprised of the situation.
Right, and thank you, Mark, for cleaning that up. Mark is exactly right. It does go to GovOps. I know there was some discussion about exigent approval versus can we get it in Ways and Means versus immediate approval. And I think we all settled on, and we all felt comfortable with, at least the Madam Chair felt comfortable with, as well as Mark and his team, that it should be presented to you all because it's still a budget issue. But tomorrow, GovOps will review it as a contract. And so I am telling you, as I was presenting to you before, that we are embarking. We've already started really in developing the fiscal 22 budget. We all know what happened last year. Some of that was due to COVID. Some of that was due to the short staff situation that we have, not just in budget but throughout the county. And this year, I do not want to put any commissioner, members of commissioner staff, in a situation where we're at risk to not getting the budget passed. And so I see Reman coming in as kind of a contractor to help us fill some positions in the short term. And of course, because this isn't a position, they aren't filling a position that's focused on a staff. It's more because we have a gap at the director or the appointee level. I don't see this as a labor relations issue. But I fully, I ask for your support, or obviously I'll make the same spiel to GovOps tomorrow. But I understand the seriousness of getting the county's budget passed. It's something that I don't take lightly. We have to get this done. We not only need to get fiscal 22's budget done, we need to make sure we have documented procedures, policies updated, so that we can make sure whoever comes in, the staff that will come in to backfill others, understand exactly what they're doing, switching costs, lower switching costs. But on top of that, we have $30 million plus investment in the ERP. One of the functions of that ERP is going to be budgetary controls, and somebody has to have that expertise to define how that budgetary control and the planning portion of the ERP to develop future budgets is going to act, and how that's going to be defined in the new system from a requirement standpoint. So there's never a good time to have the vacancies that we have, but this is a pretty serious situation.
Okay, what I would say to committee members is that the analysis is more than likely, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, will be on the agenda, or it will be sent out as part of the package to each commission member. And I would encourage our Ways and Means members to look in that package for the details of this contract that is going to government operations. I will be there tomorrow to listen to the full explanation. But I just wanted to make sure that members knew that the analysis is in government operations instead of our package. To that, we have
through the chair. This is Pam, if I might add.
Yes.
So staff is working on that agreement. It is not complete at this current moment. We are working on it and trying to get it done. Okay. And if there are questions, I'm sure staff will forward them to Huey, but we are working on it.
Okay, thank you for that. So we'll look for that. You should have it done though by tomorrow by government ops, right? Maybe?
I know that my staff had a couple of questions, so we are talking to legal, trying to just figure out some of the details and some of the questions that came up in our initial review. So I'm sure after meetings are done today, I will get with both fiscal and legal and see where we are.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're
also, this is Joe. I did send questions to Huey last night and he did answer them, so very much appreciated.
Not a problem. Listen, this is on the front burner. So any questions, you email, call, text, you will get a response as quickly as possible.
He'll be available to you all afternoon if you need it.
24/7.
Thank you. Commissioner, who is
Madam Chair.
Anderson, and then Kinlock.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to, I believe it's on the same issue. Isn't number 11 on the same issue? We're talking about contracting out again for management and budget.
Well, he'll be on with till then. I just want
Yes.
to get to this one.
Okay. I did want to ask, one of the things that I doubt will be in the package for GovOps is maybe I'd like to see a historical perspective or a historical report on management budget employees, the number of employees for the last, going back 4 to 5 years, and what has happened, up to the current date. Because my understanding is we're short quite a few people in that department, not just top management, but it sounds like there's a lot of vacancies. And I don't know if you're ready to speak to that right now, Huey, or if you could just put it in a report for us. Just a one-pager is fine.
Yeah, let's do that at a future meeting, so that way you can.
I'd like to have it before I vote on that tomorrow. I mean, so we have some perspective on what's happened in that.
Mr. Newsom, your response then.
I will try my best to get it developed. I know that there is an age report out there somewhere which shows, prior to fiscal 2020. I just have to dig it up and then hopefully update it in time. But I know there's an age report that kind of shows the gap. I can tell you directionally right now that we have roughly about 115, 120 budgeted positions, yet we've only got just south of 90 positions filled. So, but I will do my best to have it ready by tomorrow, or at least dig up the older version of it if I can't get it updated.
Because I know we lost Kelly and I, we found out about it way after the fact, and then Kevin stepped back in, thankfully, but temporarily. But I understand there's some serious issues. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Kinlock.
Just want to say that I take my hat off to Mr. Newsom and those involved in recommending for this, for them not to take the stringent action, even though they had the authority, but to be transparent and bringing it both as an information piece to us and an action item over to government ops. So I do appreciate them recognizing apparently the sensitivity in regards to the current structure and state of the management and budget office and being transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a very good commission chair who insisted to. Commissioner, I'm sorry, Mr. Mark Abbo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hugh, I just have one question for you. We kind of asked it in a question, and I was hoping that you can give more flavor on it. We were asking about whether this situation will ultimately become semi-permanent or more permanent, or when we can pull back, because one of the duties under the scope of services is maintaining the county budget. And I don't know how to define this, but I see our budget as, the priority is somewhat cultural. So, turning it over to an outside organization, I'm not sure how that's going to work. I guess we'll make it work as best we can. But are we going to ultimately bring this back to personnel within the county to manage their budget? And how do you think that this could be?
This is a good question. I actually had to be honest with you. I've struggled with it because, in theory, the charter does. We have to have a budget director, and we have an acting budget director. And does the way I look at it, the end decision making still has to belong to an officer of the county, an appointee of the county. So who's going to sign that budget adjustment form? Who's going to put things in the system? And so to that effect, I still see us having an acting budget director. I see us having an acting budget director that is supported heavily by Raymond. So that's my first response. But my second response, just like I responded last night, my expectation is that, you know, as we're building something that can be handed to someone else, which is why we have the language in there around making sure that the ERP, you know, support for the ERP and definition for requirements is there. This is something that they are here to do temporarily. It's not a permanent crutch at all. I think it behooves the county to have someone that is an employee of the county, not a firm, so for controls, controls, nothing else, to have a dedicated employee of the county or an officer or an appointee of the county to do this versus having someone here that is, you know, a contractor. So hopefully that gives a little bit more clarity.
So go ahead, Mr. Abbott.
Madam Chair.
Finished?
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Huey. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Kinlock?
Madam Chair, on the point that Mr. Abel just mentioned, that language does sound, you know, we haven't had the contract in front of us, but we don't have it in front of us. But that language does sound kind of broad. And I would ask Mr. Newsom, would it make sense to make sure that there's some sense of clarity that this is going to stay up under the control of a county officer? Because it does sound kind of broad in scope.
Yes, the answer is yes. To be honest, this is where, you know, Corp Counsel might have to chime in. I don't think I have a choice, to be honest. You know, I've seen contractors take over departments in other municipalities, but there still has to be an officer to sign something as opposed to an outside firm being able to sign something. So to be honest, this is where Corp Counsel would have to chime in. I don't think I have a choice. I think someone still has, you know, we have an acting budget director currently that signs budget adjustments, et cetera, with a lot of support. Look at the model that we have now. Kevin Haney is providing a lot of support to the budget division. He's on the call now, but yet he's not authorized to sign anything because he's not an employee of the county per se. He's a project consultant. He's a temp employee, so he's not a full-fledged employee or an officer of the county. And I envision it working roughly the same way.
Since the point was raised by our staff, I would just anticipate our staff would come with some alternate language or some points of clarity.
Okay, thank you. There was a question I was going to ask and it just bypassed me. That's okay. I will be online tomorrow and ask. With that, if there's no one else right now who needs to talk about the potential contract, or well, for the contract for tomorrow, we'll move on with the agenda.
Excellent.
Item 2, under new business, requesting commission approval of budget adjustment 2021-35078, certifying revenue in the property tax forfeiture fund.
What's the pleasure of the committee?
I'll move approval, Marecki.
It's been moved and supported. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Baker McCormick?
Yes.
Commissioner Marecki?
Yes.
Commissioner Kinlock?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Baydoun?
Yes.
Chair Varga?
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving to item 3, requesting commission approval of budget adjustment 2021-35070, certifying revenue in the general fund.
What's the pleasure of the committee?
Move approval, Commissioner Kinlock.
Support, Baydoun.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Baker McCormick?
Yes.
Commissioner Marecki?
Yes.
Commissioner Kinlock?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Baydoun?
Yes.
Chair Varga?
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving to item 4, requesting commission approval of budget adjustment 2021-35-081, certifying revenue in the general fund.
Discussion?
Madam Chair, move approval.
Support Mareki.
Been moved and supported. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker McCormick,
Yes.
Commissioner Mareki,
Yes.
Commissioner Kinlock,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Baydoun,
Yes.
Chair Varga.
Yes. I would like to take 5 through 10 together, and we'll individually I'll go through them all. And if you have any questions, then please ask. Item 5. Any questions?
Yes, I just, I know this came before us, geez, at least a presentation about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. So can someone just talk to it real quick? I mean, I think we all know what it is, but it looks pretty good to me.
Madam Chair, is it okay if I speak to this one?
Please do.
If you recall, last year, the proposal was for about $26 million to purchase the parking arrangement with the jail. That had been valued. We basically owed ROC about $30 million, and they were going to collect the revenue from the parking concession until that $30 million was paid off. So we had an opportunity last year to buy out the contract for about $26 million, which is a huge savings. Then the pandemic hit, and we were unsure about the liquidity needs of the county, so the decision was made to postpone that. So the money was effectively moved into fund balance because it was transferred over to the capital projects fund. So all we're doing right now is we're moving $28 million of it out of our capital projects fund balance and into certifying it so that it can be spent for the contract. So this is really just moving the money. We have not seen the contract yet or the update of the contract or any revisions yet, but those, my understanding is that they will be forthcoming.
Oops. Oh, okay, great. Thank you. So we will see the contract coming down the road.
Yes, this is just moving the money out of fund balance to make it available to spend for this purpose, which again, it's just satisfying another portion of the jail contract with ROC.
And the reason it went up a couple $1 million was just because
we don't know that that's going to happen.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Madam Chair, to that point.
Yes, please.
So we are not getting the allotted parking, or what is the resolve to this? Do we know what's going to happen next?
Well, the revenue from the parking was supposed to go and be controlled by ROC until their $30 million was paid off. So what's happening now is that the county will control all aspects of it, and we can choose to basically charge whatever we want or not charge for parking at the jail. Again, it was basically $30 million. It was $30 million as part of the cost of the construction of the jail. And the way to pay for the $30 million was through the revenue of the parking concession. So now we're just taking over that parking concession, and we will control all aspects of parking, going forward.
Great. I recall the conversation, and it was important to us that we controlled some aspects of parking so that we would be able to use it for public use. So, okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
We just had a discussion on this, Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to indicate, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, the 28 million is the amount that was moved over before into that fund. So it certainly could be less and is likely to be closer maybe to the 26, but we just don't have the final number yet, correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Commissioner. At the last CJC meeting, they indicated that all really had to do was update the dates, that the cost might go up slightly. Again, but it's just based on timing of when we got into the arrangement. So it's just reworking the math on it, but it should not be a significant increase. I believe it was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they were talking about, and not the millions.
And have we had any indication from the administration how the parking will be handled? Who's going to handle the receipt of the money and where that money goes at that point?
I have not gotten that granular with them. I don't know if there's somebody on the call that could take that.
This is Huey Newsom. Could you repeat the question, please?
Huey, I'm just trying to find out on the concession, once we do take ownership of the parking and the concession comes back into Wayne County rather than Rock, how will that money be handled? Where will it flow through? And how will that money be appropriated? General fund or?
That's a great question. I don't know if that's been determined yet, but in terms of the accounting, but my suspicion is a special revenue fund should be and will be set up as opposed to flowing to the general fund.
Okay.
To manage that.
We can discuss that at our next jail committee and Justice Center committee. So we can, rather than prolong this meeting, but thank you.
Commissioner Black.
Yes, Madam Chair, I think this is what you were asked. Madam Chair, I move to approve items 5 through 10.
Yes, thank you. That's what I was hoping for. Support.
Support, Anderson.
Okay, but we do have to go through them anyways.
Correct.
Item number, are we on 7, Madam Clerk?
No, we're on item 6.
6.
Any questions on item 6? Any questions on item 7? Any questions on item 8? Item 9?
Yes, 9.
Okay, Commissioner, go ahead.
Marecki, thank you. So just an update on this. Is this getting, I know it's a call center. Is this going to help get these things processed, the CPLs?
I can give you my perspective.
Okay.
And I think Dwayne is, there's representatives from the clerk's office. I did want to explain this and kind of explain where we were on this one. And then, maybe, Dwayne or someone from the clerk's office can give more detail. The letter was delivered to me in terms of everything that the clerk's office is asking in order to stand up a call center. We worked with the clerk's office and identified funding for the personnel to sit in the call center. We also identified funding for the furniture, and I think all the other asks were relatively small enough that they could either fit within the budget or we reimburse later. This budget adjustment is to move money into personnel to fund those positions. Now, obviously, after this, I think all commissioners received a letter that was addressed to me with all the specific asks, and those asks would have to be coordinated through the normal requisitioning process, freeze form requests, etc., which we're working with the clerk's office to execute. So from a financial administrative standpoint, the process is moving. I can speak to from a finance standpoint. I can't speak to it from a personnel, from a hiring standpoint, and I can't speak to it from a technology standpoint, but I can say that we are moving forward in terms of finding the dollars and working with the clerk's office to show where the dollars are. And this budget adjustment is the one thing that will come in front of you all for approval in terms of the funding, right? Everything else, personnel hires, direct once the dollars are put in the right budget line item, personnel hires don't come in from the commission. And everything else is theoretically below threshold for procurement. So we are moving, but I will say that from a finance standpoint, I think once we do this all the dollars will be in the right spots, so to speak, to get the requested call center or the parameters of the requested call center executed.
Thank you. Madam Chair, may I ask Dwayne Seals? I think he's on this. May I ask
Yes.
him a few questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So, Dwayne, it's moving along, but how about on your end? Now, these are for 8 positions, right, for the call center?
I'm sorry, this is Dwayne Sales, King County Deputy Clerk, Chief Financial Officer. This is for 6 positions, ma'am.
Okay. So what do you think is going to happen with the CPL thing? Because we're still getting letters. People are still and you know, I don't want to get political or anything here, but it seems like every time there's some kind of talk about gun control at the national level, I seem to get an influx of letters from people that are very nervous about not getting their CPL. So if you could just put some light on this.
Exactly. Through the chair, Commissioner Barackley, the clerk has been very, very concerned with as far as the backlog in the CPL. Now, this is the call center, though. This call center will actually take all phone calls that come in. As you know, we receive complaints of not being able to answer calls or get back to individuals, or sometimes just simply answering a question. Like some of the CPLs are simply renewals. They just simply need to go on and get the number. So hopefully that will actually expedite many of those in the CPL. However, though, we don't want you mistaking the CPL issue with the call center issue. The CPL issue, we have the 12 positions funded already. We just need to actually find the bodies to come in and actually fill those positions, and we need the space as well. So this issue right here is actually the call center right here.
Okay, because it mentions in our information, call center in the concealed pistol license division.
Right.
So you're just saying that some of these will be
right. And yes, ma'am. And the reason for that is that we know that many of the calls are coming from the CPL. We need a place to house these individuals for the time being. Again, as Mr. Newsom mentioned, this is kind of a temporary holding. Once we get an idea of how many calls are coming in from the CPL, how many calls are coming in from the courts or around the clerk's office, then we can disperse that. But this is just kind of more of a holding center. We recognize there was a savings, a few dollars that we could use as a holding. We plan to move those dollars back into that area once we can identify which areas is using the call center. So that's why it says CPL.
Okay, so you don't have to tell me this, but do you have some ideas where you can go with this, or should the commissioners be giving ideas like come to my house? You can use my house as the.
No, he should tell us. He should answer that.
Is it moving along? Like, are there ideas for a center place?
Well, actually, the biggest deal is that we've been working with the CEO's office. The clerk has been, and she's trying to figure out a place. As you know, with the CDC guidelines, we're only allowed to so many people within the area at one time. So even though we were able to if we were to have all the employees at this time, we would have a hard time because where we put all those individuals. So the reason this became a problem is because of the issue of CDC. We only have so many people come into that area at a certain amount of time. The clerk has instituted almost a 12-hour day shift. So they start at 8 a.m. They go into 8 p.m. If you happen to come by here at 7 o'clock at night, you'll see the hallways are just jam-packed with individuals there. So we're working on trying, and we also have started on Saturdays too. So individuals are working 8 hours on Saturdays. So we're doing everything, the clerk is doing everything she can to try to go through that process as fast as possible. But again, we're looking for the people, and the spacing would actually solve the problem.
I know that some people have volunteered their spaces for COVID related, vaccines or whatever, COVID related projects. But if you need any suggestions, I'm sure commissioners would have suggestions. So I'm opening that up in case.
But remember, we also have an issue with getting staffing too, though. So if there was a space there, who would actually be able to staff those individuals? And obviously, those individuals have to be have a background check. So we just can't get a person simply to walk in. They have to be able to pass not only us, but also the state as well.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thanks for the update.
Okay, sure.
And Dwayne, these would be union jobs, correct? That we would be filling? Right? Vacancy, or can they, can you bring it, let me ask, or could we bring people in if they're not union employees temporarily to catch up and then fill the vacancies that might take a little bit longer? I'm trying to find a happy medium here for you.
Well, I think we probably looking at some AA positions, which those are union positions. I think the clerk wants to make sure that the union is happy with whatever decision is made.
Yes.
But we don't really see an issue with actually filling those positions. We're trying to work with personnel at this time. I've been talking with Mr. Malin and his team, looking at trying to get the AA positions. We know that we can get those individuals in here, get those in here fairly quickly. We could take care of that. So yes.
And Mr. Newsom, it would sound like some of this probably could be charged to COVID-related activities because we have to space them out.
That is correct. I think the thing that we're going to have to prove, though, is the call center we have to show that we're increasing space and adhering to COVID guidelines. And so I think we'll have to work with. Let us work on that on the back end. Given a sense of urgency, if we can reimburse some of our monies that we're spending on the call center with some of this CARES money, or better yet, the American Relief Plan money, then I think we do that. But what I've been trying to challenge my team to do as much as we can is get the call center funded, right? Let's get the call center funded. And we can, as we learn more about the ARP, then we can figure out if we can reimburse ourselves with some of these dollars. But that's a very good point.
I think we could go on record to say that we would like the clerk to succeed and be able to get the numbers back where people don't have to wait very long. I think our objective are all the same, and we just have to work with a little more urgency on all parts to make it happen. Mr. Abel, do you have anything?
No, I'm good. I'm good, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Baker.
Yeah, to this point on the clerk's office, I want to thank Mr. Seals. I have reached out to him several times before, and he's been very helpful. And I understand the dilemma that they're in terms of space and staffing. We got to think maybe outside the box. If there's, I think it was touched on maybe briefly. If there's any space that's owned by the county, I'm not even sure if parts of the Guardian building, so we can, if we can create a temporary space for the clerk's office to accommodate all the people. But I also realize what Mr. Seal says about the staffing and what can we do to hire more staffing. And if we have the funding from the federal government, the CARES dollars, why don't we put this money to use immediately and provide relief to all the residents of Wayne County who want the services of the clerk's office?
Sir.
I'm pretty sure I can say this. It's probably we don't have enough staff to work on it. Maybe we're kind of all overloaded, but Dwayne, please keep in touch, and anything that we could do electronically to help your office, I certainly would be very interested before hearing about that before we go on to the next budget cycle.
Okay.
So if you could get that information to me ASAP and include things like uploading documents that might be able to help with verifying whether for death certificate, birth certificate, or information that people need to get to you, even on the CPL maybe. Anything like that, I would love to see your office work sort of like, not your office, the clerk's office, to work something like the Secretary of State where we could upload documents as well as download. So, but that does take dollars and it does take technology. And with the COVID dollars, we might be able to make those things happen. At least I'm really hoping that we could. So if you could get those items to me ASAP, I would really appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Clerk, I would like to also take the opportunity to thank all the commissioners that have worked very hard to help us in this situation. We know this is something that was unexpected, and we appreciate everyone's help and support. And we also wanted to also make a mention to Mr. Newsom and his staff. They've been very helpful in this matter too. So I want to thank all those involved.
And I think you should probably thank the executive for recognizing that they needed to meet and get on the same page.
Of course, ma'am. That would I'll leave that up to my boss, Wayne County Clerk.
I did not want to take the credit as the commission without the executive being there.
It's a collective effort.
We are all one county and we all work together. So just wanted to do that. Sounds good. Any more questions from commissioners on this item? I don't hear none. We'll move on to the next. Let me find it here, the number.
We're on item 10, Chair.
Item 10. Any questions on item 10? Okay, in that case, we do have a motion and support to take 5 through 10. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker McCormick, Commissioner Baker McCormick, Commissioner Marecki,
Yes.
Commissioner Kinlock,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Baydoun,
Yes.
Chair Varga,
Yes.
motion carries. Commissioner Baker McCormick, dismissed.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Who was that?
Ignore that. I'll get to wait to item F.
Okay. Under such other matters, I would like to answer a couple of questions from the public, or maybe under such other
Point
matters.
of order. Point of order. Item number 11. Is that an action item?
Yes, that's our next item. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Item number 11, requesting commission approval of budget adjustment 2021-35-119, reallocating expenditures in the general fund.
Thank you. Discussion. Any discussion on item 11?
Madam Chair, I just have one question, Mark Abbo.
Yes.
Huey, this is obviously the matter that we talked about earlier that's not on the agenda. Why is it only $302,000? Is it because money is already available?
Yeah, there are a couple of reasons. Number one, that 600 is for a full count, is for a full year. And this is just to fund us to the end of the fiscal year. So we're about halfway through. And so that's the reason that's the case. Now, trying to remember the math that we did. Yes, it actually should not be this. It should not take the full 302, which of course that's half of 6, which is the estimated dollar or the not to exceed amount for the full calendar year, for the full 12 months. But we just added a little bit in. This, along with some of the vacancy savings that we have in budget, should be more than enough to get us to the end of the fiscal year.
All right, very good. Thank you, sir.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Don't move, Madam Chair.
It's been moved and
Support.
Somebody support. Okay.
How you doing?
supported by Commissioner Baydoun. Please call the roll if there's no more discussion. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker McCormick, Commissioner Marecki,
Yes.
Commissioner Kinlock,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Baydoun,
Yes.
Chair Varga.
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving to item F, such other matters as may be properly submitted before the committee.
Mr. Newsom, are you still here?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. Could you let us know that when you do have the vacancies in, well, you have the vacancies in M&B, in the jobs that are vacant, could you break those out by whether they're union jobs or appointees, so that way we have some knowledge of that, and that would be helpful. And I just wanted to make sure that I didn't misspeak. I do support definitely union employees in the positions for the clerk. I just wanted to see if we could find a fast, while we were hiring the union employees, if we could bring in someone just temporarily to try to get over the edge. But I just wanted to make sure that that was not misconstrued.
Yeah, I can provide that categorization. We should be able to do that.
I appreciate that. And that goes
Madam Chair.
what Commissioner Anderson asked for. But it doesn't have, mine doesn't have to be for tomorrow. We can wait till another.
I appreciate that.
All right.
Madam Chair.
Rocky?
I totally appreciate your comments, what you just said about, just so we can keep moving this forward, if that's a possibility to bring people in, temporarily or whatever. Thank you.
Yeah, I do not want to be a union buster, and I definitely want the permanent positions to be union workers. And whatever the clerk has to do to get ahead, I'm fully supportive, and as we all are. I don't have anything else under such other matters. Any members have anything under such other matters? Mr. Abbo, do you have anything?
No, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Newsom, what do we have to look forward to in the next couple of weeks or months?
Well, I will tell you this, outside of what we've already talked about, for Riemann, I think the big thing, the big hot ticket items, the budget development process is well underway. And so you'll start receiving the normal communications in the next hopefully the next 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how things shake out. At some point, I think that there will be kind of I know maybe some offline conversations around our plans, or at least how we're going to make a decision-making model, if you will, on the ARP, which is American Rescue Plan. I think that's the other super hot item. Not necessarily for this committee, but it is important for commissioners to be aware, and a lot of you serve on the audit committee. We will be submitting our the county's audit is being finalized, and we will be on time. Thankfully, a lot of work from the deputy CFO that you all did support. The new deputy CFO, Yogesh Kasani, has spearheaded the effort to get the audit finalized, as well as our financial report. And by the way, we can no longer call it a CAFR. It's now known as an ACFR, or an annual comprehensive financial report. And so that's the new name for it, but that's coming too. So it's a very, very busy time for us in M&B. And those things will be will come before you over the next few weeks and month or two.
Okay, in your budget, as you're making your budget, or the budget that you are going to be sending to us, are you looking at two sides going along, like what could be funded through the COVID dollars and what by the general fund, so that way maybe the ask for, say, the elected officials would be a little bit larger and a little more lenient, especially in technology, if you can see yourself. We know we have limited budget on our tax dollars, but then do we? So are we encouraging that kind of look forward type of atmosphere where let's try to catch up technologically, because we know those things are more likely to be able to be chalked up to the pandemic, the need for going online as opposed to in person. So are we looking at a parallel going in our budgeting, or you haven't got that far yet?
It's my reaction to that. It probably will feel the same way it felt for the fiscal 21 budget development process, where an ask would come. We ask ourselves, can we fund it with, non-county dollars first? Does it meet the requirements? Is it something we truly need? And if it can't be funded with the CARES money first, then it flows down to county money. I think we want to do the same thing, where there's a filter of, okay, there's this project we want to do. Do we want to do it? Do we want to do it with ARP money? And if we don't want to do it with ARP money, do we have the county money to do it? I feel like it's going to kind of go through the same kind of funnel, if you will. First, non-county money, because we have to spend this money. Is it strategic? Does it meet the long-term objectives? And then, if we need it and we have to spend the county money, then we go from there. Along with other things as well, which is, we have to also look at total cost of ownership. It could be that, okay, well, it's $1 million of ARP money, but does that department have the ability to commit, the $250,000 year over year costs as well? So there are other pieces and nuances that we have to be thinking about as well. But yes, the short answer to your question is yes.
Okay. I thought so. Great minds work alike, so.
Absolutely, ma'am.
Any other questions before I go into public comments? Committee members? Okay. Madam Clerk, next item.
Next item, item G, public comments. Everyone has been asked to unmute themselves.
Okay. Anyone in the public wishing to comment? I think I'm answering the public comments as we go along in the chat box. Anyone from the public wishing to comment? I'll ask one more time. Anyone from the public wishing to comment? Thank you. Next item.
Chair, excuse me, I do have one email to read.
Okay.
It's from Local 1659. We did not receive hazard pay for essential frontline workers. Wastewater where the sewage refuge comes in, jails clerical where CS people administer swabs to prisoners. Clerical in courts, clerical in ROD, clerical in prosecutor's office, clerical in 400 Monroe, VA services, clerical building, clerical guardian building, M&B and payroll, etc. Where are the monies on this report spread out to the employees that were regularly exposed to coronavirus at Frank Murphy Hall of Justice, Lincoln Hall of Justice, jails, and etc.?
Okay, we will try to get an answer, but as you know, under public comments, one, I don't have all the answers to it, but we'll try to get that answer for you. Is there, well, we do have an email address where we can have staff forward that to the executive, I would imagine. Maybe Mr. Newsom, or Andy, we could send it to Andy and he will get an answer.
Thank you, Chair. I will forward it to him.
Thank you much.
Yes.
Yes, someone's box lit up, but it must not have been. Anyone else from the public before I go wishing to comment? There is none. Next item.
Item H, adjournment.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you. We are.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.